The other thing you said, I said that women...
Where are you going with all of this? Because I am curious if I may ask you another question. You know, you're saying the pro-life movement has, you know, no hope and it's pointless. But I just explained
I said it's ineffective.
Well, you were saying it's ineffective. But I just explained to you that as one example, there were 40,000 lives saved when Roe v. Wade fell. Roe v. Wade would not have fallen without the pro-life movement. So are those 40,000 lives, in your view, they don't matter? That means that the pro-life movement's ineffective because those 40,000 lives were saved.
I believe that those women, if they wanted to have a child, they would have it. And if they didn't want to have a kid, they wouldn't. I think oftentimes people on the internet have a tendency to think and attribute everything to themselves. But the same way that the same way, like if I was a personal training page, right, and somebody found me to lose weight, if they didn't find me, they would have found somebody else. They wanted to lose weight. I believe that when women, I believe ultimately your actions show what you want to do, not what you say, but what you actually do. So that's how
what would be your recommended solutions to abortion to save lives? What would you do?
I don't think it's solvable, unfortunately. I think women have a tendency to be ruthless. And I've shown women videos of abortions, and with a cold face, they don't care. I've met women that have had 5 abortions. They do not care. Women are very callous and cold. I mean, there's a reason women, even when a kid's born in the first year, if there is an infanticide, I'm sure you know the stat, the most likely person to do it is the mother. The most likely person to abuse a child when it's one of the biological parents is the mother. So women are far more violent than society gives them credit for. They're also the most likely to abuse the elderly. When it comes to killing the innocent, oh my gosh, women are ruthless. I think you could try to logic women. That's a strategy. I don't think it's an effective one because I don't think they care. And the reason I don't think they care is because, I've been pro-life from a young age, like quote unquote pro-life. I haven't believed in abortion from a young age. And it's because I wanted to find I wanted to find the information, right? It's on Google. There's nothing stopping a woman from finding that information. But they choose to not because they don't want to. So I don't see women stopping killing their kids ever. I mean, Pearl, by your logic, let's be real here, Pearl. By your logic, you're saying women are so evil, they're going to kill no matter what. They kill their born children too. Let me just finish, please. An eighth of the world population, that's pretty bad.
Let me just finish, Pearl. Give me 1 second here.
All right.
By your logic, we should just get rid of murder laws. We should just get rid of laws that govern the behavior of women because they're so bad, they're going to always do bad stuff. And I would say absolutely not. The law is a teacher. The law does have power. That doesn't mean everybody perfectly will follow the law.
I would love for it. I would love
we need laws.
I totally would love for it to be illegal. If it was up to me.
Well, good. I'm glad we agree on that much.
We would agree, but it doesn't mean that I think it'll happen. And I think what I often hear conservatives
help me out,
say.
Pearl. I mean, start.
Can I finish? So what I often hear conservatives say is they say the word should. Well, should is just a wish list. It's just I wish that would happen. And anyone that's like run a company or like if I went to an army general and said there shouldn't be war, he would say, wow, that sounds nice. Well, what's your plan? How are we going to end this war in the next year? And he says, well, I think it'll happen in my lifetime. If I was the general, I would say, I don't know if we're going to win this war. That's not a great strategy. And what I've heard just really aren't the best strategies. And I don't know if there is a way to win because women have too much voting power.
Well, listen, I think that the kind of argument you're making that it's so difficult, there's so much entrenched interest for why people would want abortion. And so we're never going to get rid of it. You could make that argument about other human rights abuses historically. You can make that argument about racism and Jim Crow. You could make that argument too about slavery. It was certainly there was a huge financial interest for slaveholders. So you can make those arguments about other evils that we have overcome historically. So I think it really is going to come down to willpower. And it's going to come down to a lot of grace from God. I don't think that this is just a, physical battle. This is a spiritual battle too. It's going to come down to a lot of supporting the needs of people and education. And it is going to come down to the law. And so we're going to continue to work. I mean, I'd love to have your support and backing, Pearl. I get it that, you're saying, it's a helpless fight, but we're going to keep crusading, and we're going to continue to work. So that's not just 12 states that bans abortion, but that it's 13 states and then 14 states and 15 states. We're going to continue the crusade until every child is protected.
If the crusade is an eighth of the world population aborted, I just don't think you're winning. I don't think you're close. Like, that's my point. I wish you luck.
I think there's a lot of work to do. I agree with you.
Yeah,
but I think there's been
luck.
a lot of victories as well. And we're going to keep working.
Well, yeah, I would get a better plan than maybe it's like in the next year we'll achieve this, this, and this. Then you might,
we'll keep working on it, Pearl. Trust me, every day. That's the question of how do we do this more strategically. I mean, right now, the big fight, I'll just tell you, is defunding Planned Parenthood. And I'll explain why. They're getting $800 million every single year from taxpayers. I mean, they're an almost $2 billion group. You look at the pro-life movement, the total amount of resources in the pro-life movement, including all the pregnancy resource centers, you're talking completely is dwarfed by Planned Parenthood's budget, right? $800 million from the government. They get to then turn that money around for their propaganda machine and media, for their political machine in the Democratic Party, for their academia, relationships. They're in the school system. They're doing all of their propaganda in the school system. That's all because they're being tax funded. So right now there's an opportunity really of a lifetime, because we technically have the Republicans, right, have power over the House, enough power in the Senate, and they have the White House that they could defund Planned Parenthood right now. And so one of the big things that we're calling for is get the job done, defund, and try to get all the people who are politically engaged, who, would say, I'm conservative or I'm Republican or I care about life, to say, let's get this thing done and defund. And there have been some defunding that's happened. It's a small amount in the tens of millions. The whole thing needs to be defunded. If that were to happen, that would be a huge step forward for the pro-life movement. And I think that is within the possibility at this time politically. So that's one thing we're working on.
Yeah, I just think there's bigger issues. Unfortunately,
bigger issues. Pearl, what is a bigger issue than the killing of 3,000 babies a day?
Crime, taxes.
What is a bigger crime than killing 3,000 babies a day? It's
yeah, but women are going to do that
anyway.
My God, you're not going to take that. I don't believe you'll take that away from them. I looked up the infant mortality rate in the 1800s, and it was very similar to the abortion rate today. I believe that women have always killed their kids. I think it's a terrible thing, but I think a lot of, I don't really see nagging women into stopping aborting their kids as being effective. I hope so, but yeah.
So I think maybe where you and I disagree is I think that people do have the power to choose to do the good, including the women that you have such a negative view of. I think people have the power to choose to do good. And I think we need to urge them to do it. We need to celebrate them when they do it.
A third of women are murderers.
Keep it up.
A third.
And this is for both women and men, by the way. And so I do think that by God's grace, we've been given the gift of a mind to think and a will to choose. And I think it is important to speak the truth again and again, especially in a culture like today where there's so many lies being told, so many rationalizations for evil. We got to speak the truth, and it does convict people. There are people still have consciences, even if they're seared.
Yeah,
and truth does have the power to convict.
But see, this is kind of the difference between men and women, is women have a tendency to think that speaking into a microphone is going to do a lot more than I believe it does.
Well, why do you speak into a microphone?
I report the news.
Why do you do your podcast project? What is your goal? If you think it's meaningless,
to be accurate. And so I think it's inaccurate. I think it's inaccurate to paint women, to even say that women are ever going to stop killing their kids when 1 out of 3 women have done it. I just think that's inaccurate.
Just to be clear, Pearl, it sounds like you're saying people's minds are made up. People have their evil natures. They're going to do what they're going to do. What's the point? My question to you, that's
incentives. People follow incentives. That's my point.
If I can just say something here, my question to you is, why do you do what you do if you think people's minds are all made up? They're just going to be the way that they are.
Because I always felt like conservatives, similar to you and other conservatives, were inaccurate because they want to be right and they want to push their religion. So it's very important to me that I'm accurate with what's going on.
But what's the point of being accurate if it's not going to make any difference to your point?
What's the point of being accurate?
Yeah, you're
Seriously?
saying, oh, I'm doing this to be accurate, even though it's not going to make any difference because people's minds are made up and they're also evil. So I'm just trying to understand.
I didn't say that they're, now you do this woman thing, you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say they're evil.
Well, you said, you indicated that people have always killed, their babies. People have these bad natures. I think you're referring generally speaking to.
People tend to do what's best for themselves. And if it's in a woman's best interest to kill the kid, she's going to do it most likely. And me moralizing and saying, oh, like, it's really easy, like, for me to come on here and say, oh, this is so wrong. Like, then you look good, right? You get the virtue signal. It's great. But it doesn't change the fact that women are going to do it, in my opinion.